Action macros that are created with the action recorder can be a pain to use sometimes because they replay exactly the way they were created. You want them to do that, but sometimes that's not helpful. You need it to be just a little bit different, or you need some sort of user input or user control when you play back that action macro. Another thing to keep in mind when you create them is that they don't really work well when recording work done in a dialog box. For example, if you open up the layer manager and you do some work on your layers, you may have a bit of trouble having that repeat itself. So you need to work on the command line as much as possible. The good thing though about action macros is that you can edit them and you can add in some user input pauses. It's not that difficult. So if we go to the Manage tab, and if you have the hex head bolt here available, you press play, you see, boom, it draws that in. Well, that's fantastic. Let's take it a few steps further though. So let's start our action macro recorder, and I'm going to do the same sort of thing. Just draw a polygon, give it 6 sides, and make sure when you're recording this that if there is an option for an input that you actually type it in and don't use the default. It won't necessarily read that in the recording sometimes. So keep that in mind. I'm just going to pick anywhere for it, inscribe circle, unit 1 radius, and now I'm going to draw a circle, and I'm going to shift and right click to bring up my OSNAP menu, and I'm going to go to my geometric center OSNAP. I'm going to snap right to that and zoom in a little bit so I can see what I'm doing and click on that midpoint there. Okay, now that's what I want to do. Now remember, when you do a zoom in or a pan view, it's going to add those to that, so be careful with that. But I'll show you how to go through that a little bit later on. So we have this here. That's what I want it to do, and I'm going to press stop. So our old one's called hex head bolt. I'm just going to call this one hex bolt. So now we have 2 different hex heads. So I have the hex head bolt, that's just the polygon, and I have the hex bolt. So when I go and try to draw this in, I'm going to erase both of these, press play, draws it in right there. So what I need to do is change this. And to edit this, you just go through this as if you would your command line as you're doing the commands, and you change what you need to change or what you can change. If you select something and right click, you can delete it, or you can insert a message. So let's put a message here that says, this will draw a bolt head in plan view. Click OK. So now when I press play, I get this message, this will draw a bolt head in plan view. Click close, and then it does. Okay. Now I want to change this right here, my insertion point. This is where everything is going to go. I'm going to right click on it, say pause for user input. So now when I press play, it says, hey, it's going to draw a hex head bolt. Where do you want it? Right there. That's fantastic. Now, one thing I want to do is clean this view change up. And I don't want it panning around or zooming. So I'm going to select it, right click, and delete it. Same thing at the very end here. So now when I press play, it says, yep, I know that. I'm going to draw it right there. So now I can do that. So now you see how you can go about editing things. Now I can change this too if I'd like. Pause for user input. So now when I press play, say this is going to draw a bolt head. Close. How many do I want? Say it's a weird shape. It's 10. Pick my spot, and there's my circle. Now you'll notice the circle is exactly the same. Because see here, it has a set radius. So the more you start changing things, the more you may have to change things. And if you're changing everything, then you may not even need this action recorder. But what you might want to do in an application or a way to use this that I have found is that it helps you keep doing the same steps over and over again. Polygon, circle, line, hatch pattern, something like that. It's the same steps over and over again. And this helps you, or could help you, from skipping one of those important steps. So I'm going to say pause for user input. So now when I press play, it says, hey, you're going to draw a bolt head. I'm going to tell it 8 sides. I'm going to pick a point here, and then I'm going to pick a point there. So there we go. Now it's possible you're trying to draw something that this circle isn't necessarily concentric, or it's not inscribed inside that bolt. So maybe this is a bad example for that, but you can change a lot of different items on here. You can make all of them optional, but the important thing is that you record what you did once so that you can repeat it again. And if something has to be a little bit different, you can give that option to it. Plus, you can put in a description to help you remember what it is that you have to do, all of the different steps, or someone else, in case they don't know what the steps are, you can do it one time, give it to another CAD technician, and they can just keep repeating that task over and over again. So if you have something that's similar, that's repetitive, that's simple enough to do, you can create it in your action macro.